Don and Kevin had worked for the same salvaging company for years and were called to help salvage a dried-up submarine. It was a weird and challenging request since they also had to train their new recruit, Carl. When they arrived, their eyes grew wide at the sight of the submarine. But nobody could predict what awaited inside. But before we continue, smash the like button, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell so you never miss our upcoming stories. Before they could make entry, some preparations had to be done. They measured the submarine's exterior and tried to find schematics. None of them had ever set foot inside a submarine before, so they wanted as much information as possible. Once finished, they opened the hatch. Don already had a foot inside when they were suddenly interrupted. It sounded like an army was approaching. The trio looked around, shocked to see black SUVs with tinted windows pulling up beside the submarine, ignoring posted warnings. Dozens of suited men stepped out and surrounded the vessel. Confused, the trio noticed a man below yelling and gesturing angrily. Curiosity drew them down, but they quickly regretted it. The man, large and intimidating, declared the area restricted and ordered everyone to leave. When they hesitated, he shoved a nearby worker to make his point. The trio stepped back, alarmed but intrigued. What had caused this sudden chaos? Don, Kevin, and Carl gathered their tools as more black cars arrived. The newcomers cordoned off the area with yellow tape, clearly taking control. Then Kevin pointed out a man wearing a vest marked with bold white letters, FBI. The others stared, stunned. The presence of federal agents raised endless questions. Why was the government so interested in an old submarine? Feeling both disappointed and curious, the trio left and headed to a nearby restaurant, speculating about the FBI's involvement. As the evening wore on and others left, Don, Kevin, and Carl lingered. Not much was said, but they all sensed the same thing. Something strange was going on. That question stayed heavy on their minds. The situation was too intriguing to ignore. They couldn't just let it go. After spending the entire day grinding their brains in the restaurant, the trio agreed there was one thing they had to do: try sneaking back to the submarine to see with their own eyes what was inside. When Don, Kevin, and Carl finally left the restaurant, darkness had fallen. "Perfect," Don whispered as they sneaked through the shadows and observed the area. Their hearts dropped. "This just got a lot more complicated," Kevin murmured. Armed guards now surrounded the site. Sneaking in wouldn't be easy, but their curiosity was stronger than their fear. At night, the submarine looked even more mysterious. Don, Kevin, and Carl watched carefully from a hidden spot. Fewer people remained, but 3 armed guards stayed near the vessel. "Are we really doing this?" Kevin asked. The trio looked at each other. Fear showed on their faces, but their determination and curiosity had clearly won the battle. In the dark, Don, Kevin, and Carl contemplated their next move, hearts pounding. Armed guards stood nearby, alert. Suddenly, Carl leaned in and whispered a plan. When they heard his signal, Don and Kevin were to climb quickly. A loud car alarm pierced the silence. Carl's signal. Don and Kevin sprinted to the submarine, their steps masked by the noise. With the guards distracted, they climbed the ladder and reached the hatch. They paused, realizing Carl hadn't followed. Carl had vanished into the shadows, moving silently among parked cars. They spotted him slam a car hood, triggering another alarm. Lights flashed. Guards rushed over. The distraction worked perfectly. As the alarm faded, Don and Kevin knew they had no time to lose. Don dropped through the hatch, Kevin right behind. They caught their breath, worried for Carl. But moments later, they heard movement above, and there he was, climbing down with a grin. Reunited and relieved, the trio turned to the dark corridor ahead. Quietly, they moved forward, nerves and curiosity pushing them deeper into the unknown. Don, Kevin, and Carl moved cautiously through the first compartment, but nothing unusual stood out. Disappointed, they pressed deeper into the submarine. The smell of rust and metal intensified, and the machinery, covered in cobwebs, old and unused, giving off a distinct World War II-era vibe. Everything appeared abandoned, yet something felt off. As they moved from room to room, they discovered modern food containers, oddly out of place among the decaying interior. The presence of fresh supplies in such a setting unsettled them. It suggested someone had been there recently. They continued searching, but aside from more food, found nothing that explained the FBI's presence. Frustration crept in. They had risked a lot to sneak in, hoping for answers, but found only confusion. After exploring the entire vessel, they stood quietly, questioning everything. Perhaps the submarine was just an old relic after all. With nothing left to uncover, they turned back toward the hatch. That's when something strange happened. Kevin and Don hurried back while Carl struggled to keep up. As he quickened his pace, he stumbled on a metal rod protruding from the wall and grabbed a desk to steady himself. That's when he noticed something. His eyes widened in shock. Kevin and Don turned to see what happened and watched in amazement as a hidden door slowly opened, seamlessly blended with the submarine's interior. Carl realized he had triggered a hidden button when he caught himself on the desk. Their disappointment disappeared immediately. This secret door had to be why the FBI showed up. The thought scared them a little, because what they might find could be dangerous. Hearts pounding, the trio rushed through the door, each step heavier with a strange mix of fear and excitement. The short hallway led into a room completely different from the rest of the submarine. It was spotless, so clean they could see their reflections on the shiny floor and bare walls. But the strangest thing wasn't the room itself. In the middle stood a radio on a small table, looking brand new and out of place. Don, Kevin, and Carl gathered around the radio. Kevin turned it on, static filling the room. Carl adjusted the dial, searching for a signal. A voice suddenly broke through the noise. Kevin froze, recognizing it, though the source wasn't immediately clear. All three quickly realized they had heard the voice earlier that day. Urgent and commanding, it belonged to one of the men who had taken control of the site. The message confirmed their worst suspicions. This was no ordinary salvage operation. As the radio continued, Carl scanned the room and spotted a door they had missed. Without hesitation, he moved toward it, motioning for the others to bring the radio. Carl struggled with the heavy door until Kevin joined him, and together they managed to force it open slightly. With a final effort, they pried it open, revealing a room unlike anything else in the submarine. Inside was a spotless high-tech control center, starkly contrasting the rusted compartments they had explored. Walls were lined with screens and advanced equipment, giving the space a secretive, modern feel. One of the blank monitors flickered on, displaying a live feed of the dock. More screens followed, showing various locations, streets, homes, unsuspecting people. The footage grew increasingly disturbing. Unease settled over the group as they documented everything, snapping photos and videos. While Kevin and Don focused on the monitors, Carl's attention shifted to a single folder on the tablin's odd presence among the technology. He grabbed it and flipped through pages filled with personal data on multiple individuals. Without hesitation, he tucked it under his arm, knowing it could be important. What they didn't realize was how important that decision would later become. For now, Don, Kevin, and Carl stood there debating. Carl and Kevin thought it was time to leave, but Don disagreed. He began rambling about gathering more evidence and making a plan to end this. But while talking, something happened that changed everything. As Don fiddled with the monitors, his hand accidentally hit a button, triggering a loud alarm. Instantly, the room was filled with blaring sirens and flashing red lights. Their hearts raced with panic. Their worst fear became reality when they heard a crackling sound and the familiar voice of the guard booming over the radio. They raced through the submarine's narrow, twisting corridors, red lights flashing and sirens blaring. Panic tightened their pace as they pushed forward, uncertain how close the guards were. Everything became a blur, but when they paused to catch their breath, they realized they recognized the place. They were back at the first compartment, near the hatch. They strained their ears, but the alarms were too loud to hear anything else. The radio had gone silent since the last command. It was now or never. Taking a deep breath, the trio climbed the ladder one by one. They reached the dock just in time. Moments after regrouping, they heard guards over the radio. They instinctively looked back and saw two shadowy figures disappear inside the hatch. Breathing the fresh air again felt incredible. Still trembling, they quickly moved further from the submarine toward their car. It was parked at a distance, but they made it. Don started the engine and steered toward their company's office across town. They hoped it would be safe there, but deep down, they knew this wasn't over. Don, Kevin, and Carl sat in a dark, silent office, the weight of the day sinking in. For a moment, none of them spoke. Kevin eventually opened the file again, the disturbing contents making him uneasy. Paranoia crept in. Had the guards noticed something? Were they being watched? They scanned the room for hidden cameras or anything suspicious. Carl, however, appeared unusually calm. As the others grew more anxious, he finally broke the silence with a quiet revelation. Carl admitted he hadn't been entirely honest. Don and Kevin tensed, uneasy, and unsure of where his loyalties lay. Then came the truth. Carl was an undercover agent. Shock swept over the room as he explained his mission: to investigate the activities surrounding the submarine. The CIA had been tracking the organization for some time but didn't know how the submarine was involved. When it surfaced, they saw an opportunity. Carl had gone in undercover, posing as a salvage worker. Everything had gone smoothly until the group locked down the site, forcing him to improvise. As Carl spoke, the pieces started to fall into place. Don and Kevin exchanged glances, the strange events of the day finally beginning to make sense. Don and Kevin began to understand Carl's behavior, setting off the car alarm, guiding them inside, even discovering the hidden door. It all made sense now. His actions were too precise to be coincidence. They couldn't help but laugh at the realization. Carl revealed that the supposed FBI agents were actually hitmen, posing as federal agents to keep others away and protect their operation. The danger they had unknowingly faced sent a chill through Don and Kevin. Carl assured them the CIA now had what it needed. With the submarine accessible and evidence in hand, they could finally act. He laid the stolen documents on the table and prepared to alert his agency. The files contained detailed information. Each person listed was a target. Among them, Carl's own photo appeared, confirming he was marked by the organization. The discovery added urgency. With surveillance systems possibly still active, they couldn't rule out being watched. Carl insisted they act immediately before the group vanished. He led the way, making urgent calls as they sped toward the submarine. Helicopters soon thundered overhead, and black SUVs raced past. Upon arrival, real federal agents swarmed the area while the imposters remained trapped inside. Just before exiting the vehicle, Carl responded calmly to Don's concern about tracking the rest of the group. He assured them there was already a plan, then instructed them to stay behind for safety. The arrest of the guards was the first step. Since Carl knew the submarine's layout, he took point in leading the operation. Together with the real FBI agents, he helped swiftly capture the imposters. Afterward, the agents seized everything inside the submarine. With the first step complete, the rest of their bigger plan unfolded quickly. Now that the FBI had the submarine, they gained control of the organization's internal network. One of the captured guards shared login information. Using it, the FBI and CIA traced every organization member. The group was larger than either agency had imagined, and catching everyone while protecting the targets became a huge, urgent mission. For months, the FBI and CIA worked hard to track down every hitman linked to the organization. Don and Kevin played a crucial role during this time, serving as key witnesses in several trials. Their first-hand experiences and testimony helped bring many criminals to justice and kept the intended victims safe from further harm. After tough trials, every member of the hitman group received long prison sentences. Don and Kevin emerged as quiet heroes from their adventure. They were featured in a national news article about their bravery and how they helped stop dangerous criminals. Carl, staying undercover, remained hidden while the salvage workers became known nationwide. It was all new for Kevin and Don, who never expected sneaking into a submarine would change everything. They were grateful just to have survived. Their lives were forever different. When the investigation ended, the CIA donated the submarine to a local museum. Don and Kevin were honored with an invitation to open the exhibit. Afterward, they spent hours answering questions from curious visitors. Just when they were about to leave, a director approached them. He asked if they would consider making a documentary about their story. Kevin and Don exchanged amazed looks and happily agreed, completing their unbelievable adventure. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the notifications bell so you never miss amazing tales like this one.